Пані та панове,
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 100th day of the Russian invasion and 9th year of Russian-Ukrainian war. I'm Andriy Shevchenko. On behalf of Mediacentru Ukraine team, I would like to welcome all the journalists covering our fight for freedom. Our next guest is Oleksii Makeiev, Special Representative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for Sanctions Policies. Alexei, if I may begin the conversation with the sixth package of sanctions brought in by the EU against the Russian Federation, let us start with the broad picture first. The result we're receiving this day is a defeat or a victory. It is a victory, as only 3 months ago the world could not even comprehend the discussion that Europe would renounce Russian energy supplies. Today, we've seen the fifth package of sanctions bring in sanctions on coal, and sixth package of sanctions imposes sanctions on Russian oil. Surely we have all been following that the discussions went on for at least a month in the EU, and the initial proposals about the total ban on Russian oil have stalled a few steps short of the full embargo, same as the oil delivered by pipeline. To this effect, we are somewhat disappointed. But in our further discussions with European partners, we'll keep insisting that in the mid-term prospect, we need to aspire to a full ban on Russian fossil fuels in the EU. And we have already started these negotiations already. The reason behind the disappointment is that the embargo leaves the exception for oil deliveries through the pipelines. Why was it so important to secure the total ban on Russian fossil fuels? Is just a matter of economy, or is it a political and psychological factor? Definitely, sanctions go far deeper than just the economy or the hardship for the company manufacturing one product or another. Today, we see in the Russian Federation becoming a pariah state and is treated as a pariah state. And the sanction pressure on the Russian economy has to be felt by the Russian nationals. The arguments we used to persuade the European partners included how can we continue paying Russia 600 to 800 billion euro a day, funding the continued Russian aggression and Russian war machine. So the full disconnection of oil, gas, coal, and further financial sanctions taken together can yield a positive result and strike a crushing blow to the Russian economy that the Russian society is bound to feel. We know that the sanctions before the 24th of February hurt the Russian economy. We know the numbers in 2013. The revenues per capita, or GDP rather, per capita in Russia comprised $16,000, but in 2020 it fell down to $10,000. But even such losses proved to be ineffective to stop Russia in its tracks. What do you counter the critics who say that economic sanctions are not a speedy solution to stop the war? Indeed, the economic sanctions have effect in the mid and long term perspective, but taken together, uh, in addition to the aid we are receiving from our partners in terms of weaponry and ammunition, sanctions come next as the impactful tool. Sanctions basically are a diplomatic weapon. This is the most effective and productive diplomatic weapon, and we need to deploy it as a high technology, advanced, guided, right, smart weapon. We have a question for the audience. Oleksii, greetings. I am Natalia Staroprava from the Mediacentru Ukraine. Throughout the lengthy war in Ukraine, Europe has been using Russian gas. Why did it not concern them? Did they not feel ashamed to continue using Russian gas? And what is going to change in Europe? What will the consequences be in Europe? And will Europe seek any alternatives? I would say that the world has seen Russia making preparations for a large scale war, and we're hoping that this would not come to pass. The brutal attack and the unleashed annihilation of Ukrainian state and Ukrainian people committed by Russia has served as an eye opener for the many. After the footage of Bucha, you'd find it difficult to find a person in Europe who wouldn't sympathize with Ukraine, who wouldn't have changed their attitude to Russia, country, Russian people, and the atrocity crimes committed by the Russian army. Therefore, our partners, the United States, Canada, the UK, have immediately renounced Russian oil and gas, while the EU and some European countries have been very dependent on the Russian energy supplies. Yet today, the EU has brought in the right decision for the future of weaning themselves of the dependence on Russian fossil fuels for good, as this is a gas pipe of a country does not deserve any respect, nor does its government deserve any respect. I believe we are on the right path. The involvement of the experts, Ukrainian journalists, Ukrainian society is about persuading the Europeans that this is feasible, that we can do without Russian oil and gas. And there are some specific proposals made to this effect, and they were published recently by the International Working Group on Russian Sanctions. This is a group otherwise known as Yermak Fall Group, which published a roadmap for the implementation of a policy of a full embargo on Russian fossil fuels with the right economic calculations and projections. And we are drawing on such developments as we engage with our partners. Oleksii, since I last had the honor of working in the Ukrainian diplomacy, I know that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has deemed you as the most authoritative expert on sanctions. And you might feel a bit odd today. You see the sanctions brought in that you've been advocating for years. And we've got to ask, why haven't you heard us before? But what served as a trigger this time? The West perceiving the real threat emanating from Russia, the public opinion swaying, or something else? It was the Russian atrocity crimes committed. The people in Europe have seen the Bucha massacre, have seen the razing of Mariupol, have seen the devastation of the Ukrainian towns, cities, and villages. Hundreds Ukrainian children massacred by Russians, 100,000 people who've been abducted and forcibly deported into Russia. The world has seen million Ukrainians seeking refuge in Europe. The world has woken different on the 24th. And indeed, and we have pursued the sanctions track before. Yet, every time it appeared that our partners make one short less and one short too late as they bring in sanctions. This is a personal story I'd like to share. On the 24th of February, early morning, I had to make a presentation before the ambassadors of NATO, uh, member states, about the need to bring in preventive sanctions to preempt a full-scale aggression of the Russian Federation. Imagine the ambassadors appearing when my first phrase that I told them was, "Haven't we told you? Haven't you seen?" And the reason why the sanctions were brought in with such speed and such reach was the result of the aggression. And indeed, sanctions have turned into a mighty diplomatic weapon. Let's look into the future. What are the priorities for you? Where shall we exercise the sanctions pressure? And what sanctions can we look forward to? Our priorities, starting now, will be to bring in the new package of sanctions. The sixth package of sanctions has been brought in already. Dozens other sanctions have been brought in by Canada, the US, the UK. And importantly, Ukraine sits at the table with those bringing in the sanctions, as the sanctions can only be effective if made by a cohort of countries. And now the sanctions coalition numbers over 40 countries of the world, and Ukraine is among the coalition. It is coalesced to support Ukraine. The next priorities are threefold. Firstly, the extension of the energy sanctions. Secondly, it's about financial sanctions, the full ban on Russian gas and oil, combined with full disconnection of the Russian financial system from the global financial system, capable of doing great harm to the Russian economy. The second economy element is the broadened individual sanctions list, covering all the aiders and betters of the crime of aggression, all those who helped perpetrate the war crimes. In Ukraine, the coalition team, and here I have to express my gratitude to the experts, to the analysts, the investigators from the National Agency for the Prevention of Corruption, who have helped us draw up the list comprising 12,000 individuals and 3,000 legal entities that we are urging our partners to sanction. So our ongoing negotiations with partners will be about prioritizing the sanctions for the 15,000 individuals. And the third element is about the painstaking effort aimed to close all the loopholes that Russia and its proxies are trying to dodge sanctions. So this is a three-pronged attack: the financial and economic sanctions, personal sanctions, and closing the loopholes to evade sanctions. It's the 100th day of the full-scale aggression of Russia, and this is a very sad, tragic landmark where we stop and recap. So how has this war shaped diplomacy? Since the year 2014, I would make a joke that the diplomats are working 25 hours a day as they get up an hour earlier. The impression is that now this day is unmeasured, and the diplomatic corps is robust and resilient as ever, I amass at the energies people find to fight the diplomatic front. And to answer your question, we have to say this is the energy that we harness from our fighters in the front line, those fighting in the Ukrainian army, as we know that they are relying on us to do our part. And we feel we have to deliver more weapons for them to use, that we need to put more sanctions pressure on Russia. We need to rally for more support to Ukraine, financially wise, and so that we can build a stronger coalition to support Ukraine. That would be an ample contribution that we can make for our part to bring our common victory closer. Is the world democracy evolving? Indeed, the world democracy is evolving, is becoming harsher, less willing to compromise, as we have more arguments and evidence to support the claim that we can only defeat Russia if we stand united, if we stand united as a country and if we stand united as a civilization. And the last question, when you recall the first 100 days, what moments will stick up in your mind? I will recall the moment when we first met in the early days of war, and I saw many ambassadors fighting back tears, when I saw my colleagues fighting back tears, and specific steps our partners started making to assist us. And I really hope that that impetus is going to stay strong. And I urged everyone to visit Kyiv right now, these days, and we shall celebrate all together. Oleksii Makeiev, Special Representative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for Sanctions Policies, thank you for this conversation.